Good evening and welcome to the December 4th. I'll begin again. Good evening and welcome to the December 4th, 2023 Lake Oswego Development Review Commission meeting, which is being conducted by Zoom this evening. Administrator Kluge, please call the roll of commissioners present.
Arthur?
Here.
Poinsett?
Here.
Hughes?
Here.
Leek?
Here.
O'Connor?
Here.
And we have Commissioner Bates and Sangri absent this evening.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And I note that on our agenda, we have a slot for a report by City Councilor Trudy Corrigan. Is Councilor Corrigan going to join us this evening? Have we heard?
She did not indicate she was not joining us, but she clearly is not on this evening. So,
well, she may join us later on, and perhaps, as sometimes happens, she was anticipating the meeting would be at 7. I'm not sure. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is to entertain and review and discuss, if necessary, as appropriate, the draft findings, conclusions, and order on AP 23-03, which is also denominated 499-23-001116-3, which was a request for approval of a type 2 tree application to remove 12 trees in order to construct a new single-family dwelling, which includes landscaping improvements. And again, this site is located at 2800 Wembley Park Road in Lake Oswego. Our staff coordinator is Daphne Cissell. The findings, conclusions, and order in draft form were circulated to us in advance of tonight's hearing. Commissioners, are there any comments or changes on the draft findings and conclusions and order on AP 23-03?
I find none.
None.
I'll entertain a motion then if there's no other comments.
I make a motion that we move to approve the findings of AP 23-03.
I'll second it.
Very good. Commissioner Leek moved to approve the draft findings, conclusions, and order as submitted. Commissioner O'Connor seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Arthur?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Hughes?
Yes.
Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Very good. The findings, conclusions, and order
5-0.
for AP 23-03 are adopted by the DRC as submitted. We now move on to our next item, which is the schedule review and management update. And Manager Haystay has provided us with a detailed list of upcoming events.
Yeah, so again, apologies for last meeting where I might have confused people. There are a lot of things coming up in January, opportunities for public engagement and hearings. Since I sent out that email, North Anchor, the date is for the 18th. So to go through on the next upcoming meeting dates, we will meeting on the 18th for the continued hearing for LU 23-0002. That'll be first on the agenda. Next on the agenda is LU 23-0040. That's for the development review permit modification for the North Anchor site. I have not heard a final hearing date for the wastewater treatment plant. That is tentatively scheduled for January 3rd, 2024. But again, that's going to be finalized when the applicant works on some information regarding undergrounding of utilities and subsequent tree removal and sensitive lands impacts. I do, like I said, I do wanted to make you aware of some opportunities for public engagement coming up in January. First, we have the urban and community forestry plan. We're drafting an update to that. And you have an opportunity to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission on January 22nd. That's a regular Planning Commission night. That's at 6:30 p.m. And like I said, it's a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and you'll go over the draft and give feedback on that and have an opportunity to look it over. I will not be at that meeting, but Jessica Namanaloo and Eric Olson, Eric is going to be on paternity leave, but Jessica Namanaloo will be there. The draft urban plan should be available and sent out to you early in December. So that's going to be one of the things coming at you, and we can talk more about that at the December 18th hearing. We'll probably have some better dates. Before that, on January 11th, we have the Boards and Commissions Summit, and that's an annual summit where all of the various boards and commissions are invited to sit down. And this is going to be, it's an interesting year. The Boards and Commissions Summit is transitioning to a different format. In this case, it's going to be more of a roundtable discussion, kind of a floating roundtable discussion with various council members. And it's basically an opportunity for all of the boards and commissions volunteers to get together, talk about accomplishments and goals, and think of how to work with the council in the upcoming year. Now, the DRC is a little bit unique. Obviously, the DRC isn't a policy setting or advisory committee. You work with land use applications, so more regulatory. So we don't really have anything like goals or accomplishments to talk about. In previous formats, the DRC sent in a memo basically listing out all of the meetings that were held and the public hearings that were held. It's not really, so I drafted that up before I understood what the format of this meeting would be. It's not really applicable. So there's not really anything that the planners of this summit are looking for from the DRC, other than your very important participation and feedback that you can give in these kind of roundtable discussions about various topics. So that's going to be held, like I said, on January 11th at the Adult Community Center at 6 p.m. It's in person. I will have more information about that to send to you. Voluntary, not a requisite that you attend, but again, I think an important opportunity to talk to other volunteers and also just see what's going on these other boards and commissions. So I'll get you more information on that one with any outlines for the meeting, any feedback that they would like from individuals before the meeting actually, or the summit, I should say, actually happens. Any questions about that before we talk further?
Joanna, how many people do you anticipate attending that in total?
You know, I'm not helping plan that, but there are multiple boards and commissions throughout the city, so dozens at the very least.
Yeah, there's typically a good turnout. I mean, I went to the one last year, and there were several tables, maybe 5 or 6 round. I don't know if this is the same format, but there were 5 or 6 round tables that had a lot of people, and each table spoke, and I mean, among themselves, and then a spokesman stood up and summarized what was discussed. So it is a good turnout, and you're certainly welcome to attend. And I did want to ask, will other commissions and boards be submitting a memo of some kind to be put
not a memo per se. The city manager's office put out a Google survey basically saying, hey, what is your and it was to the liaisons for the various boards and commissions saying what were the goals or what were your accomplishments of the year prior, so the year of 2023, and what are your goals for the year 2024. So again, you know, besides making sure every land use decision is done properly and in a legal fashion, I mean, we can brainstorm if you feel like you do have some accomplishments from 2023 or goals.
I did like what we did last summit. So if you have drafted a memo like that, kind of talking about the types of activities we had, what types of applications and things we came before us, I think that is generally informative to others.
Yeah, I think the focus of this is not going to be so much on those very fine-tuned details of it. They are looking for something broader. So I did talk about that. I met with Madison and Quinn from the city manager's office, and I told them I had started to draft that memo using the previous year as an example. And they said, you know, the information is not necessarily wrong. It's just not in keeping with the direction that they're going with the summit. They're trying some new ideas out. So I can go through and put some numbers in there with the Google survey.
Actually useful to the commission itself to kind of reflect back on what we've done this year, kind of following the model from last year, if you could.
Sure, I can do that. One of the things that I did. Go ahead.
Your audio is kind of weird.
Mine is?
No, Randy's.
Oh. Yeah, Randy, we can't really hear you. Okay, so I will send that out. I'll send it out as an email so you can kind of, I just went through all of the agendas and wrote up how many meetings we had and what a brief description of each of the public hearings. One of the things that I did think was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Deuce.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the things that I did think was important, and it actually come up in the conversation with Madison and Quinn, was the idea of effective public testimony, because that does go beyond just the Development Review Commission. And I talked about the handout that the DRC worked on with staff's assistance. And they did say that that was something that they felt was a great goal for the council to consider in the various ways that a general public testimony handout or more specific to a commission or a board would be helpful. So I thought I would put that in the memo as well.
Could we make it so that as part of someone's signing up to do a public testimony, they have to sign that they have read this?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Kat does send the handout to anyone who signs up for public testimony. So
we need to have them sign and say they have. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's an opportunity. I don't know that we want to put rules on public testimony. It's supposed to be an advisory handout, not a requirement. So, I think that might be verging into a bit more control than we might want to take, but we can certainly discuss that. One of the other things that we talked about was it's a 4-page handout, single spaced, and sometimes people get overwhelmed with that amount of information and detail to review. So one of the things that the planning department is looking into is converting some of our handouts to short little YouTube videos, more of an interactive and maybe friendlier way to present the same sort of information. So that was another option that we talked about. I'm sorry, Randy, I see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you. You might want to
hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all. But in any case, so I think the handout, the feedback on the public testimony is something that goes beyond the DRC. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because that was outside of the normal regulatory role that the DRC plays. That was something, an action that I think was something to note as an accomplishment. Randy, you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear us, Randy?
In any case, we have a little bit of time, so I'll bring this back on the 18th and we can talk about it further. Before the 18th, I will send out the memo. It's very simple, just listing out the projects. So not really a lot of editing to do there. I'll have somebody look over it for typos. But I'll send it out and I'll make a note about that testimony guideline and the possibility of working with other commissions and boards and the city council to see how that can be managed and distributed possibly for a broader audience beyond public testimony. The last thing I wanted to talk about with the management update are some recent code amendments and the impact that they have on the DRC in particular, the elections for chair and vice chair. And again, this upcoming year, 2024, is a little awkward because it's a transition year, and they're shifting everything to start at the beginning of the year rather than the beginning of the fiscal year. So we had elections for chair and vice chair in early July. We will need to hold those elections again, and for both the chair and vice chair positions. The first 6 months of a term will, if Chair Arthur is reappointed and Vice Chair Poinsett are reappointed, the first 6 months that they have served between July of this year and now would not count towards their chair limit, which I believe is 2 years. Is that right, Evan, or is it 1 year? 2 years? Okay. So basically, we'll have this interesting transition at the beginning of the year, the first meeting in January, but we'll have to do the elections again. Another interesting thing that's happened is both Commissioner Arthur and Commissioner Poinsett, your terms are up next June 2024. So if you wish to and are reappointed to the DRC, then your chair and vice chair positions would continue forward there. So a little messy this year. I apologize for the confusion, but we'll work through it. The only thing that you need to think about is on that first meeting in January, we'll at the end of the meeting in the management update, rehold the elections. So Randy, sorry, we can't hear you, but oh wait, no. Now we can.
No, we can't.
And now we can't. Sorry.
Joanna, can I
yeah.
add something towards the end? Since we have so many dates and things to remember, everyone remembers things differently and writes them down on their Google or Outlook, whatever. But the city has this wonderful calendar that you can pick up at the city hall, and it's all the dogs that belong to people.
City employees, yes.
And it's got lots of places to fill things in. So get yourself one. They're wonderful.
Absolutely. So let's go over the dates one more time, just in case there's any confusion. We are meeting on December 18th. We have a continued hearing and a new hearing that night. We will be meeting on January 3rd for findings at the very least, if not a continued hearing, possibly also a new hearing with the wastewater treatment plant. So January 3rd. January 11th is the Boards and Commissions Summit in the evening at 6 p.m. at the Adult Community Center. January 17th, which is the next regularly scheduled DRC hearing, that's a Wednesday. We might have continued hearings, we might have adoption of findings, so please keep that date, January 17th, marked on your calendar. And then January 22nd, which is a Planning Commission, a regular date for the Planning Commission. There's that combined meeting with them to go over the urban and community forestry plan update, the draft of that update. And that's at 6:30 p.m. in your regular spot in the council chambers. Any questions about that?
Writing those all down in my calendar.
Okay, great. That is all I have for now. I don't know of any other potential hearings coming up, but I will keep you abreast when I do find out.
One quick question: the DRC at the Adult Community Center, the round table. What time is that?
I believe that's at 6 p.m. at the Adult Community
Thank
Center.
you.
Mm-hmm. I will work on getting that memo out to you by the end of this week, so you'll have that available.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy said thank you.
Well, Bruce, I'd suggest you go ahead and take over running the meeting since we can't hear the chair.
Okay. We've reviewed schedule review and management update. Is there anything else that we need to review?
We can adjourn then.
Hearing nothing, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good night, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Bruce.